Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
Welcome, everybody, to the Truth and Liberty Show. I'm Richard Harris, and super glad to have you with us today. Our guest on today's program is going to be Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, and we're going to be talking about the immigration crisis and the threat to American sovereignty that is going on in the world today. You know, we've been talking about illegal immigration in America for a long time. Did you know it even was an issue under the Ronald Reagan administration, the Bill Clinton administration? George W. Bush talked about it and campaigned on it. Barack Obama talked about it, and on and on. Donald Trump, in his first term, promised to build a wall on the southern border to stop the flow of illegal immigrants into America. Congress, even a Republican-controlled Congress, drug its feet in funding the wall so that it never did get completed. And then when the Democrats took over Congress, they suspended the funding for it. It wasn't until his second term now that it's in office. Full and complete funding has now been enacted under the recent One Big Beautiful Bill. And so we are optimistic and looking forward to that wall being erected. Did you know that under the Biden administration, up to 20 million illegal immigrants were allowed to come into the United States of America? At its peak, Joe Biden was allowing 220,000 illegals per month to come over the southern border. 220,000, folks. So the current estimates of illegal aliens in the United States is approximately 13 to 15 million, but no one really knows. 35,000 illegals with criminal records, convictions for everything from murder and rape and armed robbery to fleeing the scene of an accident, were let go from prisons and other places and allowed to come into the United States without vetting, without security. Tens of thousands of Chinese nationals, tens of thousands of people from countries that are official sponsors of Islamic terrorism, all under this wicked, foolish, suicidal, open borders policy of the Biden administration. What I want to do in the rest of my monologue with you today, though, is I want to talk about a little bit of the scriptural background and history, not necessarily of illegal immigration, but of globalism, all right? Because I believe that the open borders of the Biden administration, the open border policy that the Democrats have actually been pushing for a long time, is actually a globalist agenda. You see, the globalist elite, what they want to do is they want to establish a one world government. That's right. Nation states, to the globalist elite, to the World Economic Forum and others, nations are a hindrance to their globalist agenda. What they are seeking, what they hope to do and want to do, is to impose a progressive agenda. That means liberal, Marxist, communist, LGBT, environmental extremism, this progressive agenda. By the way, Marxism means where the government owns everything. You understand that? And you don't get to own anything, right? The World Economic Forum has said their agenda means you will own nothing and be happy. Yeah, that's right. So a globalist, Marxist, LGBT, environmentalist agenda to be imposed on the world through a one world government. Well, to get there, what do we have to do? We have to eliminate or subordinate all nation states, right? And so illegal immigration, the call for open borders, acting like it's unjust, unfair, immoral, and racist to have borders for a nation, this whole ideology has an end to it. And it's not fairness and equality. No, it's the destruction of the nation state, because they figure if they could eliminate the boundaries of the nation, then you eliminate the sovereignty of the nation, you eliminate the area, the jurisdiction of the nation, and everybody blends together into one population without any distinctions among them. And the only government that's left would be a one world government. But folks, nations, the idea of nations is from God. Acts chapter 17, verse 26 says that God hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on the face of the earth, and hath determined the times afore appointed and the bounds of their habitation. So God has designed the concept of nations, even setting our boundaries and the times of our habitation, You see, God's purpose for man from the very beginning was for man to be his children, his image bearers, those with his likeness, for us to be fruitful and to multiply and to replenish the earth. This is in Genesis chapter 1, verses 26 through 28. And the vision of God is that we would spread out throughout the world, his image bearers, so that his world, which he made, would be filled with his image bearers as we live out the nature of God inside of us. Well, we know that in the Garden of Eden, Satan came and tempted Eve, and she sinned, gave the fruit to her husband, and he sinned, and sin entered into the world. What was the sin? What was the false belief that Satan sowed into Eve and Adam's hearts that day? It was the idea that they could be like God without God, because he said to him that you can eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You will not surely die. And then he said, for God doth know that in the days that you eat of it, you shall be like God. And ever since then in the world, the spirit of the world has believed inside of every human heart and every person, because the spirit of disobedience works in human beings, this lie that we can be God without God, that we can be like God just by controlling the natural world. That's why we lust and yearn for natural things, for physical pleasures, for what we consider to be wealth, for power, right? 1 John tells us that love not the world, neither the things that are in the world, for all that is in the world is the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, and the lust of the flesh. And so sin enters, and we see from Genesis chapter 3, the fall, all the way up to Genesis chapter 9, the flood, we see the deterioration of mankind. And so that by the time of Genesis 6, when God starts talking about Noah, it says that mankind became exceedingly wicked upon the earth, that the earth was filled with violence to the point where God regretted that he even made mankind. And so he floods the world in Genesis chapter 6 for 40 days and 40 nights, and he saves a family, one single family, the family of Noah. Noah, his wife, has 3 sons and their 3 daughters. These 8 people, and then the animals of the earth on the ark. They land on Mount Ararat and they come out, and God forms a covenant. He promises not to flood the world again with water, but there's 2 things to notice about Genesis chapter 9, verse 6 and verse 7. Verse 6 says, for whoever sheds man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. This was the first time God ever authorized man to govern other men, for man to punish other men for violation of God's standards. This was the first civil ordinance. Government, for the first time, is established by God on the earth. And if you fast forward 4,000 years to the book of Romans in the New Testament, you see the Apostle Paul tell us what government is for. It says that the people in government, the king and the ministers under him, are God's ministers to thee for good, for he bears not the sword in vain, but in order to, what? Execute wrath upon the man that doeth evil. So government exists, as we see from these passages, to punish evil, to be a restraining influence on mankind so that we don't get to the point that we got to where God had to flood the world. It's a restraining influence on man so that the gospel, the redemption plan of God, can work its way through the world and accomplish God's plan of redeeming mankind throughout history until the end of the age. So government exists by God for a purpose to restrain evil. But we have a problem. Man wants to be like God. And so man, by Satan's working in him, has always wanted to take control of this thing called government and use it for his own glory, for his own power, for his own wealth. And we don't have to go any farther than Genesis chapter 11 to find this. First, Genesis 10 tells us about a guy named Nimrod, who was Noah's son. And Nimrod, it says he was king of the land of Shinar and of some other places, and Babylon, the first kingdom in the world. And then we learn in Genesis 11 that in Genesis 11, it talks about the Tower of Babel, and it says, the whole earth was of one language and of one speech, and it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. This is where Nimrod is king, in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there, and they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach to heaven. And let us make us a name, that we be not scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. So this is a rebellion. Man is rebelling against God's commandment to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. And man is trying to fulfill the lust within him to be like God. They want to build this tower up to the heavens, and they want to escape the power of God to punish them because they were flooded, right? They come out of the flood 100 to 300 years later. Let's build a tower so that this will never happen again. We can escape from it. And also we can be like God, ruling over the world from our high place. And so God comes down and he sees this happening, and what does he do? He confuses their languages. In Genesis 11:6, it says, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they've imagined to do. In verse 7, God says, let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. If you go back to the verse we read in the beginning, Acts 17:26, what we see here is God separates mankind into cultures and families and clans, which become nations, and he establishes their boundaries. What's the purpose of this, God? Don't you want us united in the human spirit? God is saying, no, I want power decentralized. I do not want Satan taking over and ruling. I want you decentralized so that I can work my plan in the earth and we can have freedom for mankind to fulfill his God-given image as I work out my redemption plan. We look forward in Revelation chapter 13, we see this figure called the Antichrist, the beast who rises out of the sea. The Bible says in verse 7, that it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. So ultimately, Satan will have his man in charge, this Antichrist, who will rule the world through one world government. And we know from verse 7 and verse 8 and later in chapter 13 of Revelation, the Antichrist is going to force people to worship him. And those who don't worship him, see, they're worshiping man, will be put to death. This is what the mark of the beast is about. It says this in many places in the Bible. You see, Satan is wanting man to worship man to worship Satan through mankind. This perversion, this sin, this wickedness is what it's all about. And how in the modern age we have this, there's always been a manifestation of this. All of these emperors throughout ages have tried to conquer the world. And you know, you've heard of Caesar, you've heard of Nero, you've heard of Nebuchadnezzar and Pharaoh, and of Hitler, right? And of Napoleon, and of Stalin, and of Mao, and communism wanting to conquer the globe. Now you've not just got communism, you've got this thing called the World Economic Forum that meets in Davos, Switzerland. The World Economic Forum, the WEF, is an effort they're not trying to go through government directly, but through businesses coming together to co-opt and subvert governments to make them submissive so they can establish this one world government with a progressive ideology. That's a lot that I've thrown at you in this monologue, but I promise you what I'm telling you is true. And open borders is one of the agenda items of the WEF. Why? So they can eliminate the nation state. Well, folks, here in America, we are not like the rest of the world. Our founding fathers understood that the best government is the government that is the most decentralized. The closest it is to the individual, the more accountable it will be, and the less corrupt it will be, and the less likely to be tyrannical. So they had great fear about a national government. This is what the Constitutional Convention was all about, is the 13 colonies did not want a strong national government because they wanted to retain their power. The citizens didn't want it because they wanted to retain their freedom. And so this is why checks and balances and separations of powers and an enumerated powers, not a carte blanche, not a king. That's why our Constitution is the way it is. And the globalist elite hate this. They hate the Constitution of America. They hate what we're all about because they want to impose their globalist progressive agenda. And so what do they want to do? Well, one of the things is they want to subvert this country through open borders. This is why it is critical that we enforce our immigration laws in this country, that we maintain our borders, because without borders, we don't have sovereignty. Without borders, we don't have a rule of law. Without borders, we don't have a national identity. We don't really ultimately even have a constitution, because we don't have a jurisdiction anymore. This is something we cannot compromise on. And so we have these massive demonstrations and riots going on in our streets today, and they want you to think that these are organic, that these are everyday Americans who are upset about the fact that we're closing our borders and enforcing our laws. This is a lie. These demonstrations, these protests, these violent tirades, they are being funded and orchestrated and carried out by elitists, progressive elites, the George Soros types. These people are being shipped in, they're being paid for their time, they're being supplied with bricks and shields and face masks and instructions and slogans and instructions on how to demonstrate and all this other kind of stuff. This is an attempted Marxist coup of America that is continuing. We've been seeing it going on ever since Black Lives Matter and even before that, and it's continuing on today. And it is not what it seems, I promise you that. This is not about fairness and equality for illegals. This is not about compassion for illegals. This is about the sovereignty of the United States of America, one nation under God, and the rule of law in this country. We have to enforce this. We have to patiently allow ICE to do its job and to reestablish the borders of this country, because the existence of our nation, our freedom, and the Constitution absolutely depend upon it. Here to talk about this subject in more detail today is Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Allen West is a principled constitutionalist conservative with a bio that is longer than I have time to read today. He's a third and fourth generation military serviceman, having achieved the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army. He served in the U.S. Congress, being elected in November 2010. He was a Fox News contributor and a former executive director of the National Center for Policy Analysis in Dallas, Texas. And Lieutenant Colonel West is now a Patriot Life member and board of directors member of the National Rifle Association and many other organizations. And he's here to talk with us today about this incredible subject of national sovereignty and immigration. I know you're going to enjoy this time as I get to sit down with Colonel West, so you don't want to go away. I'm going to share some information with you. It'll take about 90 seconds, and then we'll be right back. Be sure to go to our website, number one, truthandliberty.net, to register for our free conference September 11th through the 13th in Woodland Park of this year, 2025, where Charlie Kirk is going to be speaking and many others. But also go to truthandlibertygtn.com, where you can get a free copy of Andrew Womack's booklet, What is Truth? This is an awesome little booklet that everybody needs to read, so be sure to do those things today. And we'll be back in just a little bit as I sit down with Colonel Allen West. Are you passionate about standing for truth in the culture, but don't know how to get started? Well, Truth and Liberty, our mission is to educate, unify, and mobilize the body of Christ to stand for truth in the public square. And as part of our mission, we provide you with an amazing array of resources on our website. And our website has just been revamped, remodeled, and retooled to be user-friendly. And I'm so excited about it because I believe that there's nothing like it out there anywhere. I want to encourage you today to go to truthandliberty.net and check out the Resources Center and the Get Equipped Center. On our Resources Center, you will find hundreds of links, hundreds of videos, articles, blogs, even America's original founding documents can be found on Truth and Liberty's Resources Center. It's searchable by topic, preset topic, or you can put in a custom search to find exactly what you need and what you're interested in. In the Get Equipped section, we link you to tools created by our strategic partners, including Pray, Vote, and Engage tools. We culture impact teams, civic action teams, biblical citizenship in modern America, biblical worldview training, and more. So go today to truthandliberty.net and find what you need to get equipped to stand for truth in the public square. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Truth and Liberty Show. It's just such an honor and a privilege for me to be able to have on the show today Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. Colonel, thank you for joining us here on Truth and Liberty.
It's my pleasure to be back with you, Richard. Thank you so much.
Well, Colonel, I didn't mention in my monologue, but I want to do this, that you currently are serving as the Executive Director for the American Constitutional Rights Union. Can you just start off, tell us a little bit about that organization and the good work that they're doing?
Yeah, sure. The organization was founded back in 1996 by former members of the Reagan administration, his Attorney General Edwin Meese, and also the gentleman that was responsible for writing his welfare reform legislation, Robert Carlson. And the whole point was to have an organization that was counter to the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Unions, because we want to stress our constitutional rights over this kind of subjective, amorphous thing called civil liberties.
Excellent. Well, Colonel, I was talking in my monologue today about the subject of national sovereignty and this illegal immigration crisis that we're wrestling with as a nation now. And, you know, it's plain to me, clear to me that the globalist agenda of open borders, which is plaguing America, it's not just us, though, it's Europe too, is actually designed to undermine the sovereignty of the United States. Am I right on that, or am I just some alarmist conspiracy theorist?
No, you're not an alarmist. You're not a conspiracy theorist, especially when these things are happening. When you look at the European Union and how it was established, one of the big things that the European Union has done is undermine the sovereignty of the respective member states by telling them that it has to have these people that can come into their countries under the guise of legality. But in truth, they are being completely violated and undermined. To look at what is happening in France when you have these riots that are going on there. Germany has experienced many problems and difficulties because of the immigrants that were forced upon them. And then, of course, in England, where you have the rape crisis that is going on, and these no-go zones where people have established their own parallel system of jurisprudence called Sharia law, and they are completely operating outside of English common law. So yes, you're starting to see the exact same thing happening here with the United States of America, pushed by, like you said, the globalist one world agenda people, Project 21, whatever you want to call it. But when you go down into Panama and through the Darien Gap, you can see that there are a lot of globalist organizations that were helping these people jump over, independent boundaries of other countries just to get them into the United States of America.
Yeah, I'm a few years ago, we all remember seeing on TV these massive caravans of thousands of people marching toward the United States. And it struck me, the media, of course, cannot be trusted, but they were treating it as if it was some kind of an organic thing. But I'm looking at it saying there's no way that that's happening just because a bunch of people decided they want to be in the U.S. Somebody is making that happen. And then we look at these riots in Los Angeles and around the country now. These are well-funded, orchestrated events. Colonel, can you speculate what is behind this? Who is behind this? What organizations? Is this just organic, or is there something more nefarious at work?
No, it's absolutely nefarious. It's not organic in any way, shape, form, or fashion. If you go back to 2008, when it was then Senator Barack Obama who stood up, I believe he was at the University of Missouri in Columbia. He said that we're 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. And this is part of that leftist, socialist, communist plan to transform the United States of America. But it is also other countries that are involved and engaged in this that have turned a blind eye. Mexico has to be part of it. But there are United Nations backed forces that want to see this undermining of this country. They want to see the violation of our sovereignty. And to put it in a biblical perspective, Richard, when Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, I mean, the Lord stationed an angel with a sword of fire to make sure they could not come back in. So God understands borders and sovereignty and things of this nature as well. Yeah. So when you talk about people just being able to come here, I was down on the border here in the state of Texas quite a many times. I was even deputized down in Kinney County, Brackettville, which sits right there along the border. And what you saw were not people that were struggling coming across. You saw people that they were not starving. You saw people with some pretty good clothes, new tennis shoes, things of this nature. But the most important thing was they had been coached on what to say and what to do. You had a lot of these non-governmental organizations that were involved. Catholic Charities was one of the preeminent ones. And the whole thing about if someone is claiming asylum, you claim asylum at the very first country you come into. You don't skip 4 or 5, even more countries, and then you claim asylum.
Yeah, I've never heard that point before, but that's an excellent one. So, Colonel, the Biden administration, with its open border policy, allowed in, highest estimates I've seen is 20 million, certainly 13, 14 million illegals into our country with no vetting, no precautions. We know now that in 2023 alone, 35,000 people with criminal convictions entered the United States, thousands of Chinese nationals, people from state sponsors of terrorist, nations. 50,000 pounds of fentanyl were brought into the United States. How has this open border policy, unfettered immigration, how is it hurting America?
Well, first and foremost, what Joe Biden did was a complete violation of the Constitution of the United States of America. It should have been an impeachable offense because when you read Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, which is known as the Guarantee Clause, there are two things that the federal government is supposed to guarantee to every state in the union. Number one, a Republican form of government, not Republican Party, but we're a constitutional republic. The second thing is to protect every state in the union from invasion. What we saw Joe Biden allow was an invasion. Let me just give you some numbers to understand. First and foremost, when you talk about the fentanyl crisis, we lost more Americans in the Biden administration to fentanyl, which is a chemical warfare attack, than if you combine the deaths, the Americans that we lost in the Korean and Vietnam wars combined.
Wow.
The other thing, when you have to look at what has been allowed to come into this country, last October, September, October, ICE estimated there was somewhere between 600,000 and 620,000 criminal illegal immigrants in the United States of America. First and foremost, when you cross the border of the United States of America illegally, that's a felony offense. And these people on top of that were committing even more crimes. Now, what's the big deal about that 600,000 number? The entire active duty United States Army is only about 425,000. The entire active duty United States Marine Corps is about 184,000. You have more criminal illegal immigrants in the United States of America than you have in your preeminent land combat forces active duty. When you hear this number, people were throwing around 1.5 to 2 million gotaways, people that are in this country. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. 30,000 illegal immigrant Chinese nationals, single military age males. That 1.5 to 2 million, that is greater than the entire active duty military that we have for the United States of America, which sits about 1.3 to 1.4 million. So these are big concerns when you start to think about domestic terrorism, when you start to think about national security threats. We just recently got 5 Iranian special interest aliens that were captured at the northern border, but Joe Biden released some 2,000 Iranian special interest aliens back into this country. And we just saw this past weekend where there was a off-duty CBP, Customs and Border Patrol agent, that was shot in the face in New York City. And then on top of that, I live here in the Dallas, Texas area, just about an hour away in Alvarado, Texas. We had 12 members of Antifa execute an ambush against the Prairie Land Detention Facility, and a law enforcement officer was shot in the neck. This is the danger of what we have. We have a full-blown insurgency happening in the United States of America that is funded by the progressive socialist left. You mentioned it in your monologue, the shields, the bricks, and things of this nature. But these folks that conducted the ambush here in Alvarado, Texas, were completely armed up with tactical gear, long rifles, short pistols, and one of the houses that they found 40 weapons and other things that could be used for continued ambushes and things of this nature. So this is very serious what we're confronting.
Wow, that's incredible. Just out of curiosity, is law enforcement going to be able to locate where they got these weapons and who's behind this operation?
Well, they should be able to. You can always track a serial number. You can see where it was purchased. And again, we have to follow the money. Without a doubt, this is not something organic. This is something that is planned. This is something that is funded, being it Black Lives Matter, being Antifa, what have you. And I think it's very important that at the federal government level, we need to declare organizations, subversive organizations like Black Lives Matter, and even Antifa especially, as domestic terrorist organizations, because that's what is happening. And anyone that is supporting, resourcing, and funding these organizations, they should be guilty of the felony offense of supporting terrorist operations here in the United States of America, aiding and abetting terrorism.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Donald Trump's administration has declared the illegal immigration crisis to be not only an emergency but an actual invasion, invoking the Alien and Sedition Acts, passed back in the Adams administration, I think. But and some of the federal courts are saying, oh, it's not an invasion, but it actually is. And if we don't deal with this situation now, if we allow this to continue, where are we going to be in 10 years?
Well, it's very important you brought up the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. There are two very important words in the Alien Enemies Act that cannot be disputed. It's called predatory incursions. And when people are coming across the border of the United States of America and they are conducting predatory actions, criminal actions against American people, look at Laken Riley, who was raped and killed down in Georgia, the mother of 5 in Maryland, who was killed when she was just out going for a walk on a trail. This is what predatory incursions is talking about, the human and sex trafficking, things of this nature. So when you look at these judges that are out there in these district courts, first and foremost, they are acting way outside their jurisdictions and their boundaries to try to place these injunctions on the executive branch doing what they're supposed to do, which is to protect the American people. And how funny it is, Richard, that during the time when Joe Biden was violating the Constitution, you heard nothing from these district judges. Now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump is coming in and having ICE and our law enforcement do what they're supposed to do and abiding by the rule of law and the Constitution, and also Article 6, Section 2 of the Constitution, known as the Supremacy Clause. The Constitution is the law of the land, and the federal government, when there's pursuing things in pursuance thereof, those are the 3 key words to the Constitution, states and local municipalities are subservient to the federal government. The federal government is supreme in those acts. And so this whole thing about sanctuary cities and sanctuary states is unconstitutional. And anyone that wants to say that this is not an invasion, look, Richard, if someone comes into your house and they are not invited, they break into your house, what is that called? A home invasion.
Home invasion. Yeah, that's right, a home invasion. And, every couple weeks we read another horror story about an illegal alien who's murdered somebody or raped some woman or something like that here in America. And Colonel, it's not to say that every illegal alien is a violent murderer, but every illegal alien is, by definition, a criminal because they have broken the laws of the United States to be here in the first place. But the problem with this unfettered immigration is you don't know who's coming in. There's no effort to protect America whatsoever. And so you got the gangs that are infiltrating, the fentanyl and the criminals and the Chinese nationals and the probably the Muslim terrorists and all this other sort of thing. So I think that's absolutely right. Well, what about the money side of this, Colonel? Donald Trump's administration just passed, Congress passed, Trump signed the one big beautiful bill. And, one thing he tried to accomplish in this is say, there was a lot done, a lot succeeded, but he wanted to say, illegal aliens, you can't get Medicaid. We're not going to pay from federal tax dollars your medical bills. And, I saw some numbers in California that I think the number was $8 billion they'd spent in Medicaid for illegal aliens, not to mention housing and all sorts of other stuff. Billions and billions of dollars we've spent on illegal aliens just to house them, support them, give them medical care and everything else. This seems out of control too, and we can't even balance our own budget.
No, you're absolutely right. And you look at a state like California and the budget deficits and the debt that they have out there, but yet they want to placate, they want to appease, and they want to fund this thing. It's a criminal action called illegal immigration. And to harbor these people is a criminal act as well. If I tried to harbor someone in my house that was guilty of a felony offense, guess what? I'm complicit to that. I'm accomplice to that crime. And so I don't understand what leg these people can stand on. And you think about the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, who is now talking about giving illegal immigrants free money so they don't have to go out and work. They don't have to go outside the home and worry about, the ICE raids and things of this nature. And ICE is focused on that criminal element. So yes, why is it that people that are coming here illegally are getting taxpayer-funded benefits? Even here in the state of Texas, one of the big issues is in-state tuition is granted toward people that are here illegally. So think about it. A kid that is, right next door in Louisiana or New Mexico, they have to pay an out-of-state out-of-state tuition rate, but someone can come here illegally and they get in-state tuition here in the state of Texas. This is unfair to the American people. This is unfair to the American taxpayer. And really what this is all about, if you go and you study and you understand the census, the left wants the census, the drawing of representative districts, to be based upon number, not upon citizens. And that's a big deal. And we're looking at doing some redistricting in this special session of our Texas legislature right now. And it has the left absolutely up in arms. So again, this goes back to 2008 when Barack Obama talked about a fundamental transformation in the United States of America. This is unconstitutional. It is unlawful. It is immoral. It is unethical what the left is trying to do to this country. And even more so, we are facing a new insurgency in the United States of America I've never seen before.
And, the latest poll numbers are showing that Americans are not in support of the deportation part of this. I think they probably still support the wall concept and closing the border, but the deportation is starting to suffer. What's going on there, Colonel? Is the Trump administration not doing enough to sell this, to explain why it's needed, to explain why it's not unjust? Does the administration need to do more to bolster public opinion on the deportation efforts?
I think the administration just needs to do more in telling the truth and telling the story and taking back the narrative. Because when you have these leftist media outlets, let's look case in point, the woman who faked her own kidnapping. And of course, the leftist media out there in California jumped on that. This is one of those things when you're the president of the United States of America, you have the biggest bully pulpit. And I'm not talking about getting on social media. I'm talking about an evening address to the American people on this issue, going down and telling them exactly what your priority is, who you're focusing on. We're not going out there looking for, grandma and grandpa, and call out the left for the lies that they have been proliferating and promulgating out there through their media platforms, because they've just become talking heads. So I think that the more the American people understand that this is about their safety, this is about their security, these are the type of people that are being taken off the streets, these are the reasons why these people are being taken off the streets, I think you'll see that number reach all-time highs. And again, this is a horrible situation that the Democrat Party tries to find themselves on. Being on the side of criminal, illegal immigrants, that's not a winning proposition.
No, I wouldn't think so. There's the man from Maryland case. I forget the guy's name, but
Abrego Garcia.
Abrego Garcia. The media wouldn't even call him illegal. Wouldn't even tell. I mean, you'd think it was some longtime American citizen that got ushered in the dead of night off to some plane and carted off to El Salvador. But turns out he is a gangbanger and he does have criminal record and criminal activity and they've allied themselves with these people. You're saying it's not a winner. Are the polls backing us up on that, or do we need to do some damage control on this on the conservative side here in order for this to get time to let this thing play out and fulfill the objective here of getting the illegals out of our country?
Well, again, I think one of the most important things in leadership is communications. That's just the same as what we see with Israel and, of course, the Islamic jihadists like Hamas, Hezbollah, and whomever, how they always try to propagandize their cause and, pit Israel into a horrible situation. I think that that's exactly what the president needs to do. And I also think about all of this pro-Hamas, pro-Islamic jihadist activity that is happening in our country. You got to stand up and start talking about it, because this does tie into what is happening with illegal immigration. You look at the young man at Columbia University, Mahmoud Khalil, who was here on a visa, and he is out on the college campuses and inciting violence against the Jewish students. How can you say that he should be allowed to stay in the country? That's not freedom of speech. That's incitement to violence. That's not freedom of expression. So I do believe that it's really important, not the social media toy, but the president needs to have maybe a weekly fireside chat or something that gets his message out there and he dominates the narrative.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, let's go back to the rule of law for just a second, if we can. The rule of law and American sovereignty. The law, it used to be kind of understood, your basic civics class in America, that Congress makes the laws, the president enforces the laws, and you get to vote for leaders who take office. If you want to change the law, then you can vote for somebody else. I don't remember reading anywhere it said you can take to the street and start throwing bricks and bottles of ice at police officers and even shooting them and breaking windows and setting cars on fire. Do we need to do a better job in our country of teaching what it means to be a responsible citizen? Where have we gone wrong in this? Are we in danger of losing this concept of the rule of law in our country?
Yes, we are, because one of the things I've always told people that the leftists do not believe in the three branches of government. They believe in the three branches of rule. And the three branches of rule for them is the media, academia, and the courts. And that's exactly what you see them trying to leverage in this issue. And so when we stop teaching civics and we turn into this and history and we turn to this thing called social studies, which is quite subjective and it really is about the ideological agenda of the left. When we had the DEI, critical race theory, critical competency action plan, whatever they want to call it, this is cultural Marxism that has seeped into not just our colleges and universities, but down to the middle school level. So yes, they are trying to dumb down America, not get them to understand the delineations and the duties and responsibilities and the enumerated powers of the three branches of government. The judicial branch is supposed to interpret the law. They're not supposed to go out there and try to make law. They're not supposed to impede the actions of the executive. That's the systems of checks and balances that we have. And it's supposed to be based upon the law, not based upon an ideological agenda and judicial activism. But that's where we have gotten to here in the United States of America. So yeah, we need a civics 101 class to get back to the basics. And I will tell you that we just had our 249th anniversary and we're heading toward 250. This country was founded as a country that said that the individual is sovereign because their rights come from a sovereign God, the Judeo-Christian faith heritage God. And that comes from natural rights theory of John Locke, your life, your liberty, your property. Of course, Thomas Jefferson changed that to the pursuit of happiness. But, the government exists by the consent of the governed. And this is not about going down the path of the Marxist way, the Saul Alinsky rules for radicals way, which is just threats, coercion, intimidation, creating fear, and ultimately violence, which is what we see happening.
Well, and you talked earlier about the constitutional requirements that were on Joe Biden to secure the border, prevent invasion. But there's another one that says that the president, this is in Article 2, shall faithfully execute the laws. Yeah. And it's wrong, isn't it, for a president just to say, well, I don't like that law, so we're not gonna enforce that one.
Yeah, he completely violated his oath to the Constitution, his oath to this country. He abdicated it in every way, shape, form, and fashion. And you even think about something as innocuous as the whole college student loan debt thing, where the Supreme Court said you can't do that. Even Nancy Pelosi said the president does not have the enumerated power to do that. He did it anyway. And so where were all these judges? Where were all of these people when that was happening? So yes, you hear the left always talk about a constitutional crisis. It's a crisis of their making.
Well, and why is it that liberals always seem to want to push a globalist agenda, Colonel? I mean, they're always behind this, they want all these environmental treaties that are going to hamstring the United States, so Paris Accords, Kyoto Protocol. They want the WHO to be in charge of our health care here in America. And they always complain when, the United States chooses to act unilaterally in some situation by, say, we're going to send the Marines over here to deal with this situation. They want us to be subordinated to these world government entities. Yeah. Why is that?
Well, first of all, let's have a little philosophical discussion. These are not true classical liberals in the sense of John Locke and the two treatises of government. Right. These are not people that believe in the individual and their sovereign liberties, rights, and freedoms. These are postmodern liberals. And again, I think the best way to describe them is by what they say. Their economic philosophy is socialism, is wealth redistribution. It is seizing the means of production, which is what Zoran Mamdani has said. It is about creating a welfare nanny state. It's about social egalitarianism, and it is about secular humanism. humanism. Now, that economic theory of socialism leads you toward the cultural model, which is Marxism, and communism. That's where they want us to go. And it is right out of the playbook of the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. So they have taken that word liberal and they have used it to confuse people and pervert it. They're not liberals. When they say the progressives, they are. That was the name that European communists used to come to the United States of America. So I think that now we have to refer to them as they are and not how they try to project themselves. They don't believe in sovereignty. They don't believe in the nation state concept. They believe in power and control that is centralized in some, otherworldly type of government, and that has always been their mantra. And it's kind of, I hate to put it this way, it's kind of like that whole Spectre thing from James Bond movies. I mean, you got to wonder who's sitting back and trying to do all these things and call all these shots. Klaus Schwab and these folks, the folks that meet over there at Davos, Switzerland. But
you can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. That's what I'm saying. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not alarmism when you can refer to examples and you can call out names. And so, a person like George Soros, who, I mean, you look at his background going back to World War II. I mean, he turned in his own people. He's a Hungarian Jew. And so, again, this is about power and control. And they despise the United States of America because of what it stands for.
Yeah. I was joking there a little bit. You got a bald guy in Switzerland who's trying to run the world, and then you got another guy who looks like the Emperor on Star Wars. So you can't make this stuff up. Yeah, Sith Lord. But so, Colonel, there's a concept that would just, if you want to drive a liberal up the wall, just start talking about American exceptionalism. Can you comment on that? It seems relevant here that we're fighting against illegal immigration, not because we're racist, but because we want to preserve this most unique experiment in freedom and liberty called America. America is exceptional. Is that tied into this? Can you comment on that further?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that. To them, as a matter of fact, it was just last year, there was a young female commentator on MSNBC, and she referred to this whole thing, natural rights theory, as an extremist movement. I mean, this is what Thomas Jefferson read in creating the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson quoted it in the Declaration of Independence when he said the laws of nature and nature's God. So yes, the existence of the United States of America is a stench in their nostrils. And again, it comes back to the 2008 thing. We have to fundamentally transform the United States of America. Look, I'm 64 years of age. 64 years ago, I was born in a blacks-only hospital in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. No one came down and said, this is what we want to hand to you. My father always taught me that you go out and you find the standard and you exceed it. That's what a man that was born in 1920 down in the South taught me, a man who served in the United States military in World War II when the country didn't see him as equal. That's why America is exceptional, because it doesn't see you about where you were born, doesn't see you about where you're from. It says that we have an equality of opportunity, that if you have a drive and a determination, you can, as the Army has as its motto, be all you can be. But leftists have a belief in an equality of outcomes, that somewhere, someone sitting behind a curtain, a little bald guy or a little Sith Lord guy, he is the one that decides your outcomes. They're the ones that decide what happens in your life. And again, it comes back to that power and control thing. And the United States of America is the supreme example of why that does not work. People came here, after the Vietnam War, people came here with nothing. And look at the success that they have had, the businesses they have created, the Ivy League educated kids that they have, and things of this nature. And so that's what America represents.
On this whole subject of immigration, this is, I think, something where lots and lots of churches have missed the mark on this, where they're looking at the individual illegals and they're thinking in terms of compassion and helping the poor, but they're not thinking about the bigger picture here. Is this because we've been operating for so long under this idea that pastors can't talk about politics, that we've just gotten so uninformed that we don't even know what we're talking about anymore? in the
Well,
church now.
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that that was one of the reasons why Lyndon Baines Johnson, when he was a senator from Texas, he came up with the Johnson Amendment. Why? Because the civil rights movement was coming out of churches and
Mm,
he wanted to silence the church. And so now we have matriculated to a point where we say, oh, yeah, let's keep the churches from addressing these issues. Let's try to, threaten them with the 501c3 revocation and things. I will tell you, Richard, that to all the pastors that are listening, when you show up at the pearly gates, God's not going to ask you about a 501c3 status. He's going to ask you if you preach the word in
yeah.
season and out, or were you out there trying to tickle people's ears? We had a great sermon at my church this past weekend talking about Romans 12 and 2, where you're not supposed to conform to the world, but you're supposed to transform it by the renewing of your mind. And I
Mm,
think that's so important when we see pastors trying to accommodate and appease the culture and society for whatever reason. When I see these commercials, Jesus gets us. No, we're supposed to get him.
mm,
That's the whole gift of salvation. Or trying to say that Jesus was an illegal immigrant too. I mean, that's how they try to fit this stuff into this box.
yeah.
But I remember when Jesus said, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's," when the Pharisees tried to trick him. So we have to, abide by the law, the rule of law. And when we see the rule of law that is threatening our Judeo-Christian faith heritage and our freedom of religion and the free exercise thereof, separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. It's not in the Declaration of Independence. Read Thomas Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptist Convention to understand what it is. It was meant to protect churches and the church from the government.
Yep.
And now we've gotten upside down.
Well, the Johnson Amendment, we got some great news last week
Yes.
that the
Yes.
IRS has agreed to settle a lawsuit. Can you comment on that and what happened there? And is that as big a deal as I think it is?
That's an incredibly huge deal. And now all of a sudden it is saying that pastors have the ability to speak not just about the issues of the day, but also they can speak to the candidates of the day. And look, let's be very honest. The Democrats have been going into black churches and doing that the whole time. I mean,
Yeah.
Joe Biden was down in Galveston, Texas, at a church speaking on Juneteenth, something that he and the Democrat Party had nothing to do with. So yes, I think it's absolutely great. I think it's Billy Long, who former colleague of mine in Congress, who is over there heading up IRS, was part of that decision being made, and I think it's the right decision.
Absolutely. So pastors can now, they always could, but the IRS had so many intimidated by it that now they can
Yes.
even go so far as to endorse candidates from the pulpit. So I like to say there's no more excuse now, pastors. You have nothing to hide behind. You got to get up and speak the truth boldly. So what about the rest of what's going on in the Trump administration? Let's talk about a few more subjects if we could, Colonel. Trump is still working his agenda on the tariff front and the trade front, trying to equalize the playing field with other countries. How do you evaluate that? How's it going there? Is he on the right track? And are we going to come out ahead in the long run?
Yes, we will come out ahead. As a matter of fact, you saw a $28 billion surplus that was unheard of. We've seen hundreds of billions of dollars come in by way of these tariffs. This is all about what we understand as fair trade. A lot of people say, they support free trade, but telling us that we have these barriers to be able to go into certain markets when, other countries have no barriers to come into our market. And we're the biggest economic market, consumer market out there. So yes, you should work hard to get into the market of the United States of America. And I would be happy to see that there were no tariffs whatsoever, when you're out there trading amongst your friends. But I think we have to be very careful when we see our adversaries like China, who realizes that they can take the trade imbalance and the trade deficit that they have, and they can use it for nefarious purposes, such as building up their maritime forces, supporting North Korea to be able to deploy troops over into Ukraine, things of this nature, threatening Taiwan. So I think that what President Trump has understood is that you can use your economy as a means of national power and make it a fair thing for the American people. And also, look at all the new investment that is coming back to the United States of America, which means jobs for Americans. So yes, we have a sign out that says America is open for business, and we're doing it from a position of strength and not weakness.
Yeah, amen. And sort of like on the deportation effort, on the tariff thing, I think we have got to be patient and allow this thing to play out. But all the hand wringers and naysayers, they were saying, "Oh, inflation's going to go through the roof and it's going to wreck the economy." Here we are, inflation's under 3%. The stock market is still climbing. And once those trade deals start falling into place, I suspect things are really going to take off.
No, you're absolutely right. And think about it. When President Trump left office, the inflation rate was 1.4%. Joe Biden took it up to 9.1%. You heard nothing from those naysayers then. And so the hypocrisy is laughable, just the same as these federal judges and district court judges who said nothing when Joe Biden was violating the Constitution. Now, all of a sudden, they have some, I don't know, situational ethic that is overtaking them.
Well, and so, Colonel, what about this one big, beautiful bill that got passed? Again, the Democrats crying and screaming, saying it's going to increase the national debt and deficit. Trump's people on the other side are saying, no, it's going to cut the debt by, $5 trillion or so over 10 years. Who's right in this equation? Was that a good bill or not?
It was a good bill, and I think it was an important bill because if not, you would see a massive tax increase on the American people, one of the largest ever. One of the things you have to understand is that the Congressional Budget Office, when they do an analysis of a bill, is what is called a static analysis. It's just basically numbers in and numbers out. It does not do what is understood as a dynamic analysis. It doesn't take into variable effects such as, all of a sudden people spending more money or more business investment and things of this nature. So I think that you will see an incredible dynamic economic boom for the United States of America. And again, we're 6 months into this. And, all of these procrastinators that want to wish doom and gloom on this country in the first 6 months, they continue to fall short. And they are truly like the Chicken Little. They're losing their effect because you can only say the sky is falling so many times.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I know what I forgot to say. How many times do we have to hear the Democrats? The only response they have to anything is people are going to die. People are going to die. People are going to die. More people are going to die. Everyone's going to die. But yet they're happy to allow criminal illegal immigrants to come into this country. And they're really killing people.
Yeah, it's amazing. All these millions of people that are going to lose their health insurance. They're talking about Medicaid. All Trump did, the main thing he did is he said, if you're able-bodied, you got to work to get Medicaid. And that's not losing your insurance. That's getting off your butt, getting out there and contributing to society.
Yeah, and one of the things that the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, did, it expanded Medicaid. And really go back and think about what Medicaid was meant to be. Medicaid was meant to be an assistance program for people, health insurance that are at or below the poverty level. So why would you want to expand a program like that? That says that you don't want people to have economic prosperity. You don't want people to have economic empowerment. You don't want people to have economic opportunity. Again, this is about wedding more people to the federal government and to the government, which again is that third point of a socialist economic mindset, is to create and expand a welfare nanny state.
Well, Colonel, thank you so much for coming on Truth and Liberty today. How can people learn more about what you're doing these days?
Sure. You can go to theacru.org. That's the American Constitutional Rights Union. One of the things that we have started with is something called the Defender Initiative, where we're supporting sheriffs that are out there joining the 287G program to work with ICE so that we can get more of these criminal legal immigrants off the street. Sadly, Richard, out there in Colorado, they have passed a law that says sheriffs cannot work with ICE. And think about that. Elected officials that want to see more crime and criminality on the streets. You can also follow me on Substack and all of the social media platforms out there, except TikTok, because I don't believe in supporting the Chinese Communist Party.
All right. So there you got it, folks. All social media except TikTok. Stay away from the Chi-Coms, and you'll be better for it. So Colonel Allen West, thank you for joining us here on Truth and Liberty today. And folks, I wanted to remind you to check out our resources page on the Truth and Liberty website. We've got a one-of-a-kind resources center there that's searchable by topic. You can find everything from abortion to how to stand up against the LGBT agenda in schools to how to vote, your elected representative, and more. And also be sure to register for the Truth and Liberty Conference coming up September 11th through the 13th in Woodland Park. Charlie Kirk will be with us, as well as many other great speakers. It's a free event, and you could register on our website at truthandliberty.net. Thank you for watching, everybody. We'll see you again next time.